Hi everyone, my name is Peter, and currently I'm an ETA here in Mongolia through the Fulbright program. I graduated from the University of Puget Sound in 2012 after I did a 5th year traveling with the PAC-RIM program in Asia. So this is actually my second time here in Mongolia. And I'm here today to just talk with you a little bit about some of my experiences here with the program and give you some advice if possible if you're considering applying for this fellowship, which I highly encourage. It's been incredible so far. It really depends on the country, and you'll probably be hearing that a lot throughout this little video here, but basically check out the Fulbright website and check out each country's individual page with their specifics because it'll really differ. Right now in Mongolia here, on paper I'm supposed to be teaching between 20 and 25 hours per week. In reality it's a little bit less than that, but that doesn't include the hours I prep for class outside of that allotted amount. But ETAs are also required to lead other clubs and activities and coordinate other events with their host institution and sometimes with other organizations in the community here. For example, I'm teaching an English club for both teachers and for students, and I've also spoken at a number of different events. So yeah, there's so many opportunities to get involved, and it really depends on your host institution because they may have different ideas for what they'd like you to do outside of teaching strictly. So for example, I'm writing an art history textbook, which I don't really have a lot of experience with, but I'm writing it for English 101 ESL learners. So it's been an experiment, but I think if you're an ETA, especially in the developing world, you need to be extremely flexible. So that wasn't at the top of my list originally, but it's been one of my projects that's been ongoing the whole year. But other ETAs volunteer with nonprofit organizations in development, or even I have a friend who's volunteering at an art gallery with all Mongolian artists displaying their work. So there's so many opportunities to get involved wherever you go, and Fulbright really encourages you to get involved. If there's side research you want to do or side projects, the grant is designed so that you have some free time built in, hopefully, to be able to do what you want. So for example, right now I'm writing a book of short stories from my teaching experience here and from some of my adventures in Mongolia. So some of the most important qualities in an ETA include being open-minded and flexible, adaptable to different environments and cultural contexts. You also have to be goal-oriented and motivated for sure. You have to be able to work independently on side projects and be able to find resources by yourself often. So if you feel like you're that type of person and are able to network well and able to meet people and explore your interests and passions, then this is probably the type of opportunity that you would thrive with. So some of the most rewarding parts of my Fulbright experience here have been outside of the classroom. I mean, I have a great time inside with my students and my co-teachers. I mean, we sing songs and play games and do fun activities to mix it up a lot. But I think the most memorable experiences I've had have been outside of that. So opportunities to visit monasteries or stay with host families, nomadic herders, to be able to go hiking and visit sacred shrines. I think, everywhere you go, you're going to have opportunities to get involved and get a taste of the local culture through all sorts of different ways, and you'll be able to meet people as you go and find things that are exciting to you, and it all really, again, depends on the host country and your personality and interests. But I think looking back, the highlights will be mostly the experiences I've had with locals here who've kind of shown me a little bit of their world and what makes it special and unique. So when you're choosing a country, there's a lot of different things to consider. Make sure you look at the Fulbright website and get all the details about the age group you'll be teaching, about your living situation, about basics like climate and diet and geography. All of these things are really important and should influence your decision too. For example, in South Korea you live with host families primarily as ETAs, whereas in Mongolia you live generally in a dormitory at your university or host institution, or you find your own housing altogether. So these are things to consider. Age groups that you teach will differ too depending on the program. We teach mostly in universities here, but in other programs in other countries they teach mostly secondary school students. Other things to look at would be, whether, like in Mongolia, the diet is entirely meat and dairy and vodka based. So finding alternatives to those three big food groups is a little challenging at times. Also, it gets to be -40 in the wintertime here, windy, snowy, sometimes too cold to snow even, but also it's super polluted. So I did all the research and kind of figured it'd be worth the risks, but not everyone's gonna make the same decisions there, and obviously people have their own preferences. So be comfortable with your decision and be informed and make sure that's reflected in your personal essays and statements. And I mentioned I grew up in Boston and I'm used to cold winters, and those are things that ultimately help because it shows that as an applicant you're prepared mentally and that you're suited for the particular environment that you're going to be placed in. Other things to look at on the website are the number of applicants applying to each country, because it'll really differ between them. For example, in Mongolia, this ETA program has only been around for 5 years, whereas others have been around for decades and decades. So Mongolia is a small program. There's only 5 English teaching assistants compared to other Southeast Asian countries where there's over 100. It's a big difference. And the number of applicants applying also really differs greatly, so be sure you know what your odds are basically, because there are about, maybe 30 or so applicants, 35 to the Mongolia program here once they got to the national level in the screening process. But for other countries, they have dozens and dozens of spots, but maybe hundreds of people apply. So just, do your research, make sure the odds are in your favor if at all possible. I think choosing a country where you visited before, especially if it's somewhere that you feel a deep connection with and that really excites you, apply to that place. It's probably going to help. I'm the only ETA here who's been to Mongolia before, and I'm sure it helped my application, but you don't have to have traveled to the country before at all. Okay, so tips I have for applicants are pretty basic, and I think the theme of this talk anyway is do your research. But look at the website that Sharon's put together. It's a fantastic resource. It has all of the deadlines there. It has all the information. Look at the Fulbright website and check out the specific country deadlines that you need to get them in by, because they differ greatly depending on the program. But UPS has specific deadlines that are kind of separate from that process for screening applicants. So make sure you're in touch with the fellowships office as much as possible. Go and visit Sharon. She's awesome. She had some great tips for my application, and I think that having the resources there at her center where you can look at previously admitted and successful applicants, you can really be prepared. And I used a lot of those resources while I was writing my own essays, and ended up bouncing a lot of my essays off of professors and people in that office, people in the Center for Writing and Learning, and really anyone I could. I wrote like 12 or 15 different versions of them, and you have to be determined and committed once you get into this process, but it's entirely worth it, and you can do it. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm gonna put my email here, and feel free to get in touch with me.